Meeting the Ancient Prophets.
Towards the end of the meal, my guide again spoke to me. In my first message, I told you of a residence located on our planet where people from Earth can continue to live thanks to the scientific secret of eternity that is based on a single cell. Among those people are Jesus, Moses, Elijah, and so on. This residence is in fact very large, since it is an entire planet where the members of the Council of the Eternals live as well. My name is Yahweh, and I am the president of that Council of the Eternals. There are currently 8,400 people from Earth living on the planet where we are at this moment. They are people who during their lives reached a sufficient level of open-mindedness towards the infinite, or who enabled humanity on Earth to progress from its primitive level through their discoveries, their writings, their ways of organizing society, and their exemplary acts of fraternity, love, or selflessness. Alongside them live the 700 Elohim members of the Council of the Eternals. Whatever the outcome of your mission may be, you have your place reserved here among us in this veritable little paradise where everything is easy thanks to science, and where we live happily and eternally. I can truly say eternally, for as on Earth, we created all life here, and we are starting to understand perfectly the life of the infinitely large, that is to say, of the planets, and we can detect signs of old age in solar systems, which will enable us to leave this planet in time to create another paradise elsewhere as soon as we grow anxious about its survival. The Eternals who live here, both people from Earth and Elohim, can fulfill themselves as they wish without having to do anything but that which pleases them. Scientific research, meditation, music, painting, and so on. Or they can do nothing at all if they feel like it. The servants you saw carrying the dishes a little while ago, as well as the dancers, are just biological robots. They are created according to the same principle we use to create the people of Earth, in a totally scientific way. They have been limited and are absolutely submissive to us. They are also incapable of acting without orders from us, and they are very specialized. They have no aspirations of their own and no desires for pleasure, except certain ones that their specialization require. They grow old and die like us, but the machine that makes them can make far more than we need. They are incapable of feelings or suffering and cannot reproduce themselves. Their lifespan is similar to ours, that is to say about 700 years with the help of a small surgical intervention. When one of them must be destroyed due to old age, the machine that created them produces one or several others depending on our needs. They come out of the machine ready to function, and with their normal height, for they have neither growth nor childhood. They only know how to do one thing, obey people from Earth and Elohim, and they are incapable of the slightest violence. They can all be recognized by the small blue stone that both males and females wear between their eyes. They take care of the dirty jobs and do all the work that is uninteresting. They are produced, taken care of, and destroyed underground, where, in fact, all the maintenance work is done by such robots, and by enormous computers that regulate all the problems of nourishment, supply of raw materials, energy, and other things. We each have, on average, 10 robots at our service, and, as there are slightly more than 9,000 of us, Earth people and Elohim, there is a permanent total of 90,000 male and female robots. Like the Elohim members of the Council of the Eternals from Earth are not allowed to have children. They agree to have a small operation which makes them sterile, but that sterility can easily be reversed. The purpose of this measure is to prevent undeserving beings from joining us in this marvelous world. However, male and female Eternals can unite freely just as they wish, and all jealousy is eliminated. In addition, men who wish to have one or more companions outside the relationships of equality that exist between eternal men and women, or who do not want to live with a woman on an equal basis, may have one or more totally submissive biological robot women with the exact appearance that is desired. The same goes for women, who can have one or several totally submissive biological robot men. The machine that generates the robots gives the entity that it creates the exact physical appearance and specialization desired. There are several types of ideal women and men in terms of shape and physiognomy, but the height, measurements, shape of the face, and so on can be modified as one wishes. One can even submit the picture of someone particularly admired or loved on Earth, for example, and the machine will produce an exact replica. Thus, the relationships between Eternals of both sexes are much more fraternal and respectful, and the unions between them are marvellously pure and high. Because of the extraordinary levels of open-mindedness of those admitted here, there is never any problem between them. The majority spends almost all of their time meditating, doing scientific research, making inventions and artistic compositions, and creating all sorts of things. We can live in different cities with multiple architectural styles in greatly varied sites that we can modify at will. People fulfill themselves as they wish, only doing what they like to do. Some find pleasure in doing scientific experiments, others in playing music, others in creating even more amazing animals, and others in meditating or doing nothing other than making love while enjoying the numerous pleasures of this heavenly environment, drinking from the innumerable fountains and eating the juicy fruits that grow all over the place at all times. Here there is no winter. We all live in a region comparable to your equator, but as we scientifically control the climate, it is always fine weather and not too hot. We make the rain fall during the night when and where we wish. All this and many other things which you could not understand all at once makes this world a true paradise. Here, everyone is free and totally safe, for all deserve that liberty. All things that bring pleasure are positive, as long as that pleasure is not harmful to anyone in any way. This is why all sensual pleasure is positive, for sensuality is always an opening up to the outside world, and all such opening is good. On earth, you are only just emerging from all those primitive taboos that tried to make everything to do with sex or nudity appear evil, whereas nothing could possibly be purer. Nothing is more disappointing for your creators than to hear people say that nudity is something bad. Nudity, the image of what we have made. As you can see, almost everyone is naked here, and those dressed in clothes wear them either because they are works of art given to them by other Eternals who made them with their own hands, or for elegance and decoration. When people from Earth are admitted to this world of the Eternals, they start out by receiving some chemical education so that nothing surprises them, and they have a good understanding of where they are and why. My guide Yahweh paused for a moment and then said, "You are now sitting directly opposite the man who, 2,000 years ago, was given the responsibility of creating a movement to spread more widely the message we had originally left to the people of Israel, a message which would enable you to be understood now. I am referring to Jesus, whom we were able to recreate from a cell that we had preserved before his crucifixion." The handsome, bearded young man seated opposite offered me a smile full of fraternity. To his right is Moses, to his left Elijah, and to the left of Elijah sits the one remembered on earth by the name of Buddha. A little further on, you can see Muhammad, in whose writings I am called Allah, because out of respect they did not dare call me by name. The 40 men and women present at this meal are all representatives of the religions created after our contacts on Earth. All those present looked at me with expressions that were very friendly and amused, probably because they were remembering their own surprise upon arriving in this world. My guide continued, "Now I will show you some of our installations." He rose and I followed him. He invited me to put on a very wide belt bearing a huge buckle. He and his 2 friends had buckled on the same kind of adornment. Immediately, I felt myself being lifted up from the ground and carried at about 20 meters above the grass, almost level with the tops of the trees, at a very great speed, probably over 60 miles per hour. My 3 companions were with me, Yahweh in front and his 2 friends behind. One curious thing among others was that I did not feel any wind at all whipping against my face. We landed in a small clearing, quite close to the entrance of a small cave. We were in fact still being carried by our belts, but only at a height of 1 meter above the ground, and moving more slowly. We passed through galleries with metallic walls and arrived in a vast hall, in the centre of which was an enormous machine surrounded by about 10 robots, recognizable by the ornaments on their foreheads. There we landed on the ground again and took off our belts. Yahweh then spoke. "Here is the machine that makes biological robots. We're going to create one of them for you." He made a sign to one of the robots located near the machine, and the robot touched certain parts of it. Then he made a sign for me to move close to a window measuring about 2 meters by 1 meter. In a bluish liquid, I then saw the form of a human skeleton vaguely taking shape. Its form grew clearer and clearer, finally becoming a real skeleton. Then some nerves took shape and formed over the bones, then some muscles, and finally some skin and hair. A splendid athlete was now lying there in a position where moments earlier there had been nothing. Yahweh spoke again. Remember in the Old Testament this description in Ezekiel, chapter 37. Son of man, can these bones live? There was a noise, and behold a shaking, and the bones came together, bone to his bone. And when I beheld, lo, the sinews and the flesh came upon them, and the skin covered them above, and the breath came into them, and they lived, and stood up upon their feet, an exceeding great army. The description that you will give of this will certainly be similar to Ezekiel's, apart from the noise, which we've been able to eliminate. Indeed, what I had seen corresponded perfectly to Ezekiel's description. Following this, the prostrate figure had slid to the left and disappeared completely from my sight. Then a trapdoor opened, and I saw the creature whose rapid creation I had witnessed, lying on a very white fabric. He was still immobile, but suddenly he opened his eyes, got up, came down the few steps that separated him from our level, and after exchanging a few words with another robot, came up to me. He gave me his hand, which I shook, and I felt his skin soft and warm. Do you have a picture of a loved one with you? Yahweh asked. Yes, I answered. I have a picture of my mother in my wallet, which I left in my clothes. He showed it to me, asking if it was the right one. When I agreed that it was, he gave it to one of the robots, who inserted it in the machine and touched parts of it. Through the window, I witnessed yet another creation of a living being. Then, as the skin started to cover the flesh, I realized what was happening. They were making an exact replica of my mother from the picture I had provided. Indeed, a few moments later, I was able to kiss my mother, or rather the image of my mother as she had been 10 years before, for the picture I had provided had been taken about 10 years previously. Yahweh then said to me, Now allow us to make a very small puncture in your forehead. One of the robots came towards me, and with the help of a small device similar to a syringe, pricked my forehead so lightly that I hardly felt it. Then he inserted the syringe in the enormous machine and touched other parts of it. Again an entity was formed before my eyes. As the skin covered the flesh, I saw another me take shape little by little. Indeed, the being that emerged from the machine was an exact replica of myself. As you can see, Yahweh told me, this other you is not wearing the small stone in his forehead that is characteristic of the robots, and which the replica of your mother also had. From a photo, we can only make a replica of the physical body, with no psychological personality, or almost none. Whereas from a sample cell like the one we took from between your eyes, we can create a total replication of the individual whose cell we took, complete with the memory, personality, and character. We could now send the other you back to Earth, and people would not notice a thing. But we are going to destroy this replica immediately, for it is of no use to us. At this moment, there are two of you who are listening to me, and the personalities of these two beings are beginning to be different, because you know that you are going to live, and he knows that he's going to be destroyed. But that does not bother him, since he knows he is nothing but yourself. This is more proof, if proof is needed, of the non-existence of the soul, or a purely spiritual entity unique to each body, in which certain primitive people believe. After that, we left the room that housed that enormous machine, and through a corridor, we entered another room containing other equipment. We approached another machine. In this machine are kept the cells of malevolent people, who will be recreated to be judged when the time comes. They are cells from those on earth who preached violence, wickedness, aggressiveness, and obscurantism. Despite having in their possession all the elements to understand where they came from, these people did not have the sense to recognize the truth. They will be recreated to undergo the punishment they deserve after being judged by those whom they made suffer, or by their ancestors or descendants. You now fully deserve a rest. This robot will be your guide and will provide you with anything you desire until tomorrow morning. We will then have a few more words to say to you, and afterwards we will accompany you back to Earth. Between now and then you will have a foretaste of what awaits you when your mission is completed on your planet. The next moment, a robot approached and saluted me respectfully. He was tall, athletic-looking, dark, beardless, and very handsome.
A foretaste of paradise.
The robot asked me if I wanted to see my room, and after I agreed, he handed me one of the belts used for travelling. I found myself being transported above the ground again, and when I landed once more, I found myself in front of a house that looked more like a scallop shell than a residence. The interior was entirely carpeted with shaggy furs, and there was a huge bed, at least as big as 4 earth beds, looking as if it had been sunk into the ground. It was recognisable only by the different coloured furs covering it. In one corner of the huge room there was a massive sunken bathtub, as big as a swimming pool, surrounded by vegetation of marvellous shapes and colours. "Would you like some female companions?" asked the robot. "Come, you can make your own choice." I put my belt on again and found myself transported back in front of the machine used for making robots. A luminous cube appeared in front of me. I was shown to an armchair facing the cube and given a helmet. When I was settled down, a magnificent young brunette with marvellously harmonious proportions appeared 3-dimensionally within the luminous cube. She moved in such a way as to show herself off, and had she not been in a cube floating 1 meter above the ground, I would have thought she was real. My robot asked me whether she pleased me, and if I wished to have her shape altered or her face modified. I told him that I considered her perfect. He replied that, aesthetically speaking, she was the ideal woman, or rather one of the 3 types of ideal women as defined by the computer according to the taste of the majority of residents on the planet, but I could ask for any modification that I desired. At my refusal to change anything whatsoever about the magnificent creature, a second woman, this time blonde and alluring, appeared in the luminous cube. She was different but just as perfect as the first one. With her, I could not find anything to alter either. Finally, a third young female, this one a redhead more sensual than the first 2, appeared in the strange cube. The robot asked me if I cared to see other models or if these 3 ideal types of my race would be enough for me. I answered quite naturally that I thought these 3 people were extraordinary. At that moment, a magnificent black woman appeared in the cube, then a very fine, slender Chinese female, and then finally another voluptuous young Asian woman. The robot asked me which person I desired to have as a companion. Since I answered that they all pleased me, he went towards the robot-making machine and spoke for a moment with one of his peers. Then the machine was set in motion, and I understood what was about to happen. A few minutes later, I was back at my residence with my 6 companions. There, I had the most unforgettable bath that I have ever had in the company of those charming robots, totally submissive to all my desires. Afterwards, my robot guide asked if I wanted to make some music. When I said yes, he took out a helmet similar to the one I had put on before the projection of the female robot models. "Now," he said, "imagine some music that you would like to hear." Immediately, a sound was heard corresponding exactly to music that I had been thinking about, and as I constructed a melody in my head, that same melody became a reality with sounds of an amplitude and sensitivity that were more extraordinary than any I had ever heard. The dream of every composer had become a reality. The ability to compose music directly without having to go through the laborious process of writing and orchestrating. Then my 6 adorable companions began dancing to my music in a most voluptuous and bewitching way. After a while, my robot asked me if I would also care to compose some images. Another helmet was given to me and I sat in front of a semicircular screen. I set myself to imagining certain scenes, and these scenes at once became visible on the screen. I was seeing, in fact, an immediate visualization of all the thoughts that came to me. I started thinking about my grandmother, and she appeared on the screen. I thought of a bouquet of flowers, and it appeared. And when I imagined a rose with green spots, it appeared as well. This machine actually made it possible to visualize one's thoughts instantaneously, without having to explain them. What a marvel! With training, one can create a story and have it played out, my robot told me. Many performances of this kind, performances of direct creation, are held here. Finally, after a while I went to bed and spent the most extravagant night of my life with my marvellous female companions. The next day, I got up and took another perfumed bath, and then a robot served us a delicious breakfast. Then he asked me to follow him, for Yahweh was expecting me. I put on the transportation belt again, and soon found myself in front of a strange machine where the president of the Council of the Eternals was waiting for me. It was not as large as the one which created robots, but was still very big. A sizable armchair was embedded in its centre. Yahweh asked me if I'd spent a pleasant night, and then explained to me, This machine will awaken certain faculties that lie dormant within you. Your brain will then be able to exploit its full potential. Sit down here. I sat down in the chair that he indicated, and a sort of shell covered my skull. I thought I was losing consciousness for a moment, and then it felt as if my head were about to explode. I saw multicolored flashes pass before my eyes. Finally everything stopped, and a robot helped me out of the armchair. I felt terribly different. I had the impression that everything was simple and easy. Yahweh spoke again. From now on we will see through your eyes, hear through your ears, and speak through your mouth. We will even be able to heal through your hands as we already do at Lourdes and in many other places in the world. We judge that certain sick people deserve our help because of their will to radiate the message we have given you, and because of their efforts to acquire a cosmic mind by opening themselves to infinity. We observe everyone. Huge computers ensure a constant surveillance of all people living on Earth. A mark is attributed to everyone depending on whether their actions during their life led towards love and truth or towards hate and obscurantism. When the time comes to evaluate, those who went in the right direction will have the right to eternity on this heavenly planet. Those who achieved nothing positive yet were not evil will not be recreated. And for those whose actions were particularly negative, a cell from their body will have been preserved, which will allow us to recreate them when the time comes, so that they can be judged and suffer the punishment they deserve. You who are reading this message understand clearly that you can have access to this marvelous world, this paradise. You will be welcome. You who follow our messenger Claude Rael, our ambassador on the path to universal love and cosmic harmony. You who will help him realize what we will ask of him. For we see through his eyes, hear through his ears, and speak through his mouth. Your idea of creating a congregation of guides for humanity is very good, but be strict with regard to their selection so that our message will never be deformed or betrayed. Meditation is indispensable for opening one's mind, but asceticism is useless. You must enjoy life with all the strength of your senses, for the awakening of the senses goes together with the awakening of the mind. Continue to play sports if you wish and if you have the time, for all sports and games are good whether they develop musculature, or better still self-control as do motor racing and motorbike racing. A person who feels alone can always try to communicate telepathically with us, while trying to be in harmony with the infinite. He or she will feel an immense sense of well-being. What you have advised concerning a gathering of people who believe in us in each region on Sunday mornings at about 11 o'clock is very good. Few members are presently doing this. Mediums are useful, so seek them out, but balance them because their gifts as mediums, which are only gifts of telepathy, unbalance them, and they begin to believe in magic, the supernatural, and other incredibly stupid things, including an ethereal body, which is a new way of trying to believe in the soul, which does not exist. In fact, what they are actually doing is tuning into people who lived several centuries ago and whom we have recreated on this paradisical planet. There is an important revelation which you may now make. The Jewish people are our direct descendants on earth. That is why a specific destiny is reserved for them. They are the descendants of the sons of Elohim and the daughters of men, as mentioned in Genesis. Their original mistake was to have mated with their scientific creations. That is why they have suffered for such a long time. But for them, the time of forgiveness has come, and they will now be able to live peacefully in their recovered country, unless they make another mistake in not recognizing you as our messenger. We wish our embassy on earth to be built in Israel on a tract of land given to you by the government. If they refuse, you may build it elsewhere, and Israel will undergo a new punishment for not having recognized our messenger. You must devote yourself entirely to your mission. Do not worry. You will be able to support your family. People who believe in you and therefore in us must help you. You are our messenger, our ambassador, our prophet. And in any case, you have your place reserved here among all the other prophets. You are the one who must gather together people of all religions. For the movement you have created, the Raelian movement, must be the religion of religions. I insist that it is indeed a religion, although an atheistic religion, as you have already understood. Those who help you we shall not forget, and those who cause you trouble we shall not forget either. Do not be afraid, and fear no one. For whatever happens, you have your place amongst us. As for those who lose confidence, shake them up a little. 2,000 years ago, those who believed in our messenger Jesus were thrown into a lion's den. Today, what do you risk? The irony of fools, the sneers of those who haven't understood anything and prefer to keep to their primitive beliefs. What is all that compared to a lion's den? What is all that compared with what awaits those who follow you? Truly, it is easier than ever to follow one's intuition. In the Quran, Muhammad, who is among us, has already said on the subject of prophets, "The moment for men to give account is drawing near, and yet in their nonchalance they are turning away from their Creator. No new warning comes from their Creator whom they ignore and laugh at, and their hearts are amused by it. Those who do evil comfort themselves secretly by saying, 'Is not this man only a mortal as we are? It is a jumble of dreams. He made it all up himself. He is a poet. But let him bring a miracle like those who were sent in the past.'" Quran, Surah 21, verse 1 through 5. Even Muhammad had to suffer the sarcasm of some, and Jesus had to suffer it as well. When he was on the cross, some said, "If thou be the Son of God, come down from the cross." Matthew 27:40. And yet, as you have seen, Jesus is in marvellous shape and will be for all eternity, as is Muhammad and all those who followed them and believed in them. On the other hand, those who criticize them will be recreated in order to receive their punishment. The computers that monitor those people who have no knowledge of this message are linked to a system that, at the time of death and from a distance, automatically samples a cell from which they may be recreated if they deserve it. While waiting to build our embassy, create a seminary for the guides of the Raelian movement near the area where you reside. It is there that you, who are our prophet, the guide of guides, will be able to train those responsible for spreading our message all over the earth.
The New Commandments.
Yahweh then said, "Those who wish to follow you will apply the laws I am now about to give you. You will appear at least once in your lifetime before the guide of guides so that he may transmit your cellular plan through manual contact, or have it transmitted by an initiated guide to the computer that will take this into account at your life's final hour of judgment. You will think at least once a day of the Elohim, your creators. You will try to radiate the message of the Elohim around you by every possible means. You will at least once a year give a donation to the guide of guides that is equal to at least 1% of your annual income, in order to help him devote himself full-time to his mission and travel around the world to spread this message. You will at least once a year invite the guide of your region into your home, and you will gather at your place people who are interested in hearing him explain the message in all its dimensions. If the guide of guides should disappear, the new guide of guides will be the one who has been designated by the former guide of guides. The guide of guides will be the guardian of the embassy of the Elohim on earth, and will be able to live there with his family and with the people of his choice. You, Claude Rael, you are our ambassador on earth, and the people who believe in you must provide you with the means to accomplish your mission. You are the last of the prophets before the judgment. You are the prophet of the religion of religions, the demystifier and the shepherd of shepherds. You are the one whose coming was announced in all the religions by the ancient prophets, our representatives. You are the one who will bring back the shepherds' flocks before the water is spilled, the one who will bring back to their creators those they have created. Those who have ears may hear, those who have eyes may see. All those who have their eyes open will see that you are the first prophet who can be understood only by scientifically evolved beings. All that you speak of is incomprehensible to primitive peoples. This is a sign that will be noticed by those whose eyes are open. The sign of the revelation, the apocalypse.
To the people of Israel.
Yahweh moved towards a conclusion by saying, "The state of Israel must give some territory located near Jerusalem to the guide of guides, so that he may build there the residence, the embassy of the Elohim. The time has come, people of Israel, to build the new Jerusalem as it was foreseen. Claude Rael is the one who was foretold. Reread your writings and open your eyes. We wish to have our embassy among our descendants, and the people of Israel are the descendants of the children born of the unions between the sons of Elohim and the daughters of men. People of Israel, we removed you from the clutches of the Egyptians, and you did not show yourselves worthy of our confidence. We entrusted you with a message destined for all humanity, and you jealously kept it instead of spreading it abroad. You have suffered for a long time to pay for your errors, but the time of forgiveness has come. And as was foreseen, we have said, to the north give them up, and to the south do not hold them back. I have gathered your sons and daughters from the ends of the earth, as was written in Isaiah, and you have been able to find your country again. You will be able to live there in peace if you listen to the last of the prophets, the one who was foretold to you, and if you help him to accomplish what we ask of him. This is your last chance. Otherwise, another country will welcome the Guide of Guides and build our embassy on its territory, and that country will be close to yours. It will be protected, and happiness shall prevail, and the state of Israel will be destroyed once more. You, child of Israel who has not yet returned to your ancestral lands, wait before returning there to see if the government will agree to our embassy being built there. If they refuse, do not return, and you will be one of those who will be saved from the destruction, and whose descendants will one day be able to find the promised land again when the time comes. People of Israel, recognize the one foretold to you. Give him the territory to build our embassy and help him build it. Otherwise, as happened 2,000 years ago, it will be constructed elsewhere. And if it is constructed elsewhere, you will be dispersed once again. If 2,000 years ago you had recognized that Jesus was indeed our messenger, all the Christians in the world would not be Christians, but Jews. You would not have had problems, and you would have remained our ambassadors. But instead, this task was given to other people who took Rome for their base. 2,000 years ago you did not recognize our messenger, and it was not Jerusalem, but Rome that shone. Now you have a new chance for it to be Jerusalem once more. If you do not seize it, another country will shelter our embassy, and you will no longer have any right to the land we had chosen for you. There, I have finished. You will be able to annotate all this by yourself once you have returned to Earth. Now enjoy this paradise a while longer, and we will take you back for you to complete your mission before returning to us for good. I remained there for several more hours, enjoying the many pleasures of that world, meandering amongst numerous fountains and enjoying the company of the great prophets whom I had met the day before during meditation sessions. Then, after a last meal taken with the same people as the day before, I found myself once again in the large vessel, which set me down at the observation station. From there, I retraced my route of the day before, and found myself with my clothes in the small craft which dropped me off where it had picked me up, at Rockpla. I looked at my watch. It was midnight. I returned home, where I immediately set to work to write down all that I had been told. Everything was perfectly clear in my mind. I was surprised to find out that I was writing it all at one stroke, recalling without any hesitation the sentences I had heard. The words remained as if engraved in my mind, just as I had been told they would at the beginning. When I finished the account of what had happened, I began to feel very clearly that something had been released inside me. This had never happened before. I began writing again, all the while observing closely what I was putting down, as if I was simultaneously discovering it as a reader. I was writing, but this time I did not feel like the author of what was appearing on the paper. The Elohim was starting to speak through my mouth, or rather to write with my hand. What was being written before my eyes dealt with all areas that a person is confronted with during his or her lifetime, and the right way to react when faced with these problems. It was, in fact, a code of life, a new way of behaving in the face of life's events, of behaving like an adult. That is to say, as an evolved being, and therefore trying in every way to open one's mind to infinity and to place oneself in harmony with it. These great rules dictated by the Elohim, our creators, our fathers who are in heaven, as our ancestors used to say without really understanding, are all set forth here in the following pages in their entirety.
Chapter 3. The Keys. Introduction.
For thousands of years, those opposed to enlightenment and reform have effectively imprisoned our minds in straitjackets. These writings, however, are the keys we can use to set ourselves free. The door to the human mind is fastened by many locks, all of which must be opened at the same time if one wants to be able to approach the infinite. If only one key is used, the other locks will remain fastened, and if they are not all kept open at the same time, then while the second lock is being freed, the first one will close again, preventing the door from opening. Human society is afraid of what it does not know, and so it is afraid of what lies behind this door, even if it is happiness gained through knowledge of the truth. Therefore, it applies pressure to prevent people from even partly opening this door, because society itself prefers to remain in a state of misfortune and ignorance. This is yet another obstacle found on the threshold of the doorway through which the mind must pass to free itself. But, as Gandhi said, it is not because no one sees the truth that it becomes an error. So if you attempt to open this door, ignore the sarcasm of those who have not seen anything, and of those who, having seen, pretend not to see because of their fear of the unknown. Also, if opening the door seems too difficult for you, ask for help from a guide, since guides have already opened the doors of their own minds and know the difficulties involved. They will not be able to open your door for you, but they will be able to explain the different techniques that will enable you to succeed. Besides, they are living witnesses of the happiness that can be achieved by opening the door, and they prove wrong those who are afraid of what lies behind the door.
Humanity.
Right from the start, we must always consider things on 4 levels: in relation to infinity, in relation to the Elohim, our parents and creators, in relation to human society, and finally, in relation to the individual. The most important level is that relating to infinity, for it is in relation to this level that all things must be judged, but always with one constant factor: love. This means taking into account those who must be given love, because we must live in harmony with infinity, and to do this we must live in harmony with others, because they are part of infinity as well. Then we must take into account the advice given by our creators, the Elohim, and act in such a way that human society listens to the advice of those who created it. Then we must take into account society, which makes it possible for individuals to blossom on the path of truth. But although society must be taken into account, it should not be followed. On the contrary, society must be helped to emerge from its primitive straitjacket by regular questioning of all its habits and traditions, even if these are supported by laws, because laws can also imprison our mind in shackles of obscurantism. Finally, we must take into account the fulfillment of the individual. Without this, the mind does not reach its full potential, and it is impossible to harmonize yourself with infinity and become a new person if you are not fulfilled.
Birth.
You must never impose any religion whatsoever on a child, who is still but a larva unable to understand what is happening to itself. So you must neither baptize nor circumcise children, nor submit them to any action that they have not themselves accepted. You must wait for them to reach the age of understanding and choice, and if a religion appeals to them at that time, then they should be free to embrace it. A birth should be a festive occasion, for the Elohim created us in their image to be capable of reproducing ourselves. By creating a living being, we preserve our own species and respect the work of our creators. A birth should also be an act of love, achieved in harmony as far as sounds, colours and temperature are concerned, so that the human being who is emerging into life develops the habit of being in harmony. You must immediately develop in children the habit of respecting the liberty of others, and when they cry at night, go to them discreetly but without their realizing that crying has brought them the comfort of being tended. On the contrary, you must go to them and look after them when they make no sound, and not go to them, at least not with them being aware of it, when they cry. That way they will get used to everything going better when they are in harmony with their surroundings. God helps those who help themselves. In fact, parents must understand that as soon as a child is born, it is first of all an individual, and that no individual should be treated like a child. Even our creators do not treat us like children, but as individuals. That is why they do not intervene directly to help us solve our problems, but allow us to overcome the obstacles that we encounter by working things out for ourselves as responsible individuals.
Education.
The little creature who is still just the larva of a human being must, in its infancy, grow accustomed to respecting the liberty and the tranquility of others. Since little children are too young to understand and reason, corporal punishment should be rigorously applied by the person bringing them up so that they suffer when they cause suffering or disturb others by showing a lack of respect. This corporal punishment should be applied only to very young children, and then always in keeping with the child's growing power to reason and understand. It should be phased out progressively and eventually be stopped altogether. From the age of 7, corporal punishment should be quite exceptional, and from the age of 14 it should never be applied. You will use corporal punishment only when punishing a child for not respecting the freedom and tranquility of others or yourself. You will teach your child to blossom, and you will teach him or her always to have a questioning attitude towards those things which society and its schools want to inculcate. You will not force your child to learn things that are not useful, and you will let him or her follow any desired path, because do not forget, the most important thing is his fulfillment. You will teach your child always to judge things in the right order with respect to infinity, with respect to our creators, with respect to society, and with respect to itself. You will not impose any religion on your child, but instead impartially teach him or her the various beliefs that exist throughout the world, or at least the most important ones in chronological order: the Jewish religion, the Christian religion, and the Muslim religion. You will try to learn the major trends of thought of the Eastern religions if you can, so that you are able to explain them to your child. Finally, you will explain to him or her the main points of the message given by the Elohim to the last of the prophets. Above all, you will teach your child to love the world in which it lives, and through this world, our creators. You will teach him or her to open up to infinity and try to live in harmony with infinity. You will teach your child about the marvelous work accomplished by the Elohim, our creators, and constantly seek ways for humanity to become capable of repeating someday what our creators have done, namely creating other humanities elsewhere by scientific means. You will teach your child to consider itself a part of the infinite, that is, both immense and minute at the same time. From dust were ye made, and dust ye shall become. You will teach your child that the wrong done to others cannot be undone by any confession or absolution once it is done, and that it must not be thought that when death is near, it is sufficient to begin to believe in the Elohim or any God in order to have the right to eternal life. You will teach your child that we are judged by what we do throughout our lives, that the path which leads to wisdom is long, and that it certainly takes a whole lifetime to master it sufficiently. A person who has not gone in the right direction throughout life will not gain the right to scientific resurrection on the planet of the Eternals just by making a sudden late change to the right path. That is, unless that person's regret is truly genuine, and he or she acts with great sincerity, making up for lost time, striving to be forgiven by those who are harmed and devoting all his means to bringing them love and happiness. All this will still not be enough for the person who has made others suffer, for even if he or she is forgiven by them and gives them love, the errors will have been erased, but nothing positive will have been accomplished. This person will then have to set out anew and bring happiness to new people whom he or she has never harmed, and help those who spread the truth, the guides. But it is too late for someone who has regrets only at the moment of death or shortly before. This person will not be forgiven.
Sensual education.
Sensual education is one of the most important things, and yet at the moment it scarcely exists at all. You will awaken the mind of your child, but you will also awaken his or her body, for the awakening of the body is linked to the awakening of the mind. All those who seek to numb the body are also numbing the mind. Our creators have given us our senses so we might use them. The nose is meant for smelling, the eyes for seeing, the ears for hearing, the mouth for tasting, and the fingers for touching. We must develop our senses so as to get more enjoyment from all those things, which our creators put here for us to enjoy. A sensual individual is far more likely to be in harmony with infinity, because such a person can feel it without having to meditate or reflect. However, meditation and reflection will enable that individual to understand this harmony better and to radiate it all around himself or herself by teaching. To be sensual means to let your environment give you pleasure. Sexual education is very important as well, but it only teaches the technical functions and uses of the organs. Sensual education, on the other hand, teaches us how to gain pleasure from our organs purely for pleasure's sake, without necessarily seeking to use them for their utilitarian purposes. To say nothing to your children about their sexual organs is wrong, and although it is better to explain what they are for, this is still not enough. You must explain how they can gain pleasure from them. To explain only their function would be like telling them that music is for marching to, that knowing how to write is helpful only for penning letters of complaint, or that movies are useful only for giving audiovisual courses and other such nonsense. Fortunately, thanks to artists and through the awakening of our senses, we can obtain pleasure from listening, reading, or looking at works of art that were made for no other reason than to give pleasure. The same goes for the sexual organs. They are not just for satisfying our natural needs or for ensuring reproduction, but also for giving pleasure to others and ourselves. Thanks to science, we have finally emerged from the days when showing one's body was a sin and when sexual intercourse brought its own punishment, the conception of a child. Now, thanks to contraceptive techniques, sexual union is freely possible without it becoming a definitive commitment, or even a possible one. You will teach your child all this without shame, but on the contrary, with love, clearly explaining that he or she was made to be happy and blossom fully, that is to say, to enjoy life with all the senses and with their full force. You must never be ashamed of your body or your nakedness, for nothing displeases our creators more than to see those they created feeling ashamed of the appearance that has been given to them. You will teach your children to love their bodies and every part of the Elohim's creation, because in loving their creation, we love them as well. Each one of our organs was created by our parents, the Elohim, so that we might use it feeling not shame, but happiness at using something for which it was designed. If the act of using one of our organs brings pleasure, it means that our creators wish us to have that pleasure. Every individual is a garden that should not be left uncultivated. A life without pleasure is an uncultivated garden. Pleasure is the fertilizer that opens up the mind. Asceticism is useless unless it is a temporary ordeal designed to train the mind to dominate the body. But once we have succeeded in the ordeal that we have set ourselves, which must always be limited in time, we should once more enjoy the pleasures of life. Asceticism can be accepted as the fallow period of the garden which is an individual. That is to say, a momentary pause in the search for pleasure which enables us to appreciate it better later on. You will accustom your children to having more and more freedom by always treating them as individuals. You will respect their tastes and inclinations as you would like them to respect your own. Make sure you realize that your child, male or female, is what it is, and that you will not be able to make it what you want, just as it will not be able to make you what it wants you to be. Respect your child so that it respects you, and respect its tastes so that it respects yours.
Fulfillment.
Self-fulfillment should be sought according to one's tastes and aspirations without any preoccupation with what others think, as long as no one else is being hurt. If you feel like doing something, first see that it does no harm to anyone. Then do it without worrying about what others think of it. If you feel like having a sensual or sexual experience with one or several other individuals, whatever sex they may be, you may behave as you desire, as long as they agree. Everything is permitted on the path to fulfillment in order to awaken the body and hence the mind. We are at last emerging from those primitive times where women were seen merely as instruments of reproduction for society. Thanks to science, women are now free to fulfill themselves sensually, without having to fear the punishment of pregnancy. At last, woman is truly the equal of man, since she may enjoy her body without living in fear of having to endure alone the undesired consequences of her acts. Conceiving a child is something too important to be left to chance. Therefore, do so only by choice after mature consideration in a marvelous act of love, being fully aware of what you are doing, and being certain that you truly wish it. After all, a child cannot become a successful individual unless it is truly desired at the very moment of conception. The moment of conception is most important because it is at that time that the first cell, and therefore the plan of the individual, is conceived. This moment must therefore be desired, so that the first cell may be created in perfect harmony, with the minds of the two parents thinking strongly and consciously of the human being that they are conceiving. This is one of the secrets of the new individual. If you are looking only for the fulfillment of your body, and therefore of your mind, use the means that science has put at your disposal, starting with contraception. Only conceive a child when you yourself are fulfilled, so that the life you conceive may be the fruit of the union of two fulfilled individuals. To reach fulfillment, use the means that science has provided to enable you to awaken your body to pleasure without any risk. Pleasure and procreation are two different things and must not be confused. The first is for the individual and the second is for the species. It is only when the individual is fulfilled that he or she can create a fulfilled human being. If by accident you have conceived a child without desiring it, use the means that science puts at your disposal: abortion. A child who was not desired at the moment of conception cannot blossom fully, since it was not created in harmony. Do not listen to those who try to frighten you by talking about the physical, and especially ethical consequences that an abortion can trigger. There are none if you are treated by competent people. Keeping an undesired child, however, can leave you with physical and moral disturbances that can be passed on, making the child you brought into the world suffer too. Having a child does not necessarily imply that you must be married or even live with a man. Already many women have decided to have one or more children without marrying or living with a man. The education of a child, who is an individual right from birth, should not necessarily be provided by the parents. It would indeed often be preferable for education to be entrusted to specialized people who would contribute far more than some parents towards their children's fulfillment. If you wish to have a child without living with a man, do as you desire, fulfill yourself, as you would like without worrying what others think. If you choose to do this, do not think that you are condemned to live alone forever. Welcome the men you like and they will serve as masculine role models for your child. You can even decide one day to live with a man. This will not cause any problems for your child at all. On the contrary, it will contribute to his or her fulfillment. A change of environment is always positive for a child. Society should organize itself to take charge of the education of children partially or totally, depending on the parents' wishes. Those parents who want to work should be able to leave their children in the custody of competent people, and those who want their children to receive an education given entirely by such individuals should be able to entrust their children completely to establishments created for this purpose. In this way, if you give birth to a child you desire, but afterwards you separate from your companion, or for any other reason you no longer desire the child, you will be able to entrust your child to society so that it may be brought up, surrounded by the harmony necessary for its fulfillment. A child who grows up in surroundings where it is not really and truly wanted cannot blossom and be fulfilled. Bringing up a child should be mutually fulfilling for both parent and offspring. If a child becomes a nuisance, however slight, it realizes this and fulfillment is affected. A child should therefore be kept near you only if its presence is felt to be fulfilling. Otherwise, the child should be put in establishments that society must create to encourage fulfillment and be placed there without the least regret. On the contrary, parents should feel a profound sense of joy because they are entrusting their child to others more capable than themselves of helping each little individual to blossom. Regular visits can even take place if the children whose wishes are of primary importance would like them. The people in charge of the children's education should always describe the parents as exceptional people, who placed more importance on their children's fulfillment than on their own selfish pleasure of bringing them up themselves. They did this, the children should be told, by entrusting them to people more competent than themselves. Choose your partner freely if you desire one. Marriage, whether religious or civil, is useless. You cannot sign a contract to unite living individuals who are bound to change because they are alive. Reject marriage. This is only the public proclamation of ownership of a person. A man or woman cannot be the property of anyone else. Any contract can only destroy the harmony existing between two individuals. When we feel loved, we feel free to love. But when we have signed a contract, we feel like prisoners who are forced to love each other. And sooner or later we begin to hate each other. So you will live with the person of your choice only for as long as you feel happy with him or her. When you no longer get on well together, do not remain together, because your union will become hell. All living beings evolve, and rightly so. If the personal evolution of each individual is similar, the union lasts. But if their progress is different, the union is no longer possible. You no longer like the individual you used to like because one of you has changed. You must part from each other while retaining happy memories of your time together, instead of spoiling it with useless bickering which gives way to hostility. A child chooses clothes that fit, and when it outgrows them they must be changed for different clothes, otherwise they will be torn to pieces. Above all, do not be worried about your child. It is better for him or her to be with only one parent in harmony than to be with both in discord, or lacking perfect harmony. Do not forget that children are, above all, individuals. Society must make absolutely sure that old people have a happy life without any material worries. But, although we must respect the age and do everything to make them happy, we should not listen to them just because of their seniority. An intelligent person can give good advice at any age, but a stupid person, even if he is 100 years old, does not deserve to be listened to for a second. What is more, such a person has no excuse, having had an entire lifetime in which to try to awaken, whereas there is still hope for a young and stupid person. But in any case, a stupid old person must still be able to live comfortably. This is a duty for society. Death should not be an occasion for sad gatherings. On the contrary, it should be a time of joyful celebration, because it is the moment when the beloved one may perhaps reach the paradise of the Eternals in the company of our creators, the Elohim. You will therefore ask not to be buried religiously, but you will donate your body to science, or you will ask that your body be disposed of as discreetly as possible, except for the bone of your forehead. More precisely, the part located above the beginning of the nose, 33 millimeters, 1.3 inches, above the middle of the axis linking the pupils of your eyes. At least 1 square centimeter, 0.4 square inches, of this bone should be sent to the Guide of Guides so that he may keep it in our embassy on Earth. Each person is monitored by a computer that records all their actions and makes a tally of them at the end of their life. But people who know about this message, which Claude Rael is communicating, will be recreated from the cells that they have left in our embassy. In their cases, recreation will take place only if they ensure that the required part of their body is sent to the Guide of Guides after their death. The mechanism within the computer that records the information to be used in judgment of individuals remains in operation after they learn about the message. But the mechanism that allows an automatic sampling of a cell at the moment of death is disconnected. So only those who comply exactly with what is required once they know about the message will be recreated. Make sure that at least once in your life you see the Guide of Guides, or a guide authorized by him to transmit your cellular plan to the Elohim, so that they may awaken your mind and help you to remain awakened. In accordance with what is written earlier in this message, you will not leave an inheritance to your children, except for the family house or apartment. The rest you will leave in your will to the Guide of Guides. And if you fear your descendants might not respect your last will and testament, but might try to recover your property through the courts, you will bestow it while you are alive on the Guide of Guides, in order to help him spread the message of our creators on earth. Those of you who remain after the death of a loved one, do not be sad and lament. Try instead to give love to those you love while they are still living, because once they are dead, what makes you unhappy is the thought that perhaps you did not love them enough, and that now it is too late. Anyone who was good in their lifetime has the right to the Elohim's gardens for eternity, and will know happiness. And anyone who was not good does not deserve to be missed. But even if an individual is not among those chosen for recreation, he or she does not really vanish. Death is not a very important thing, and we should not be afraid of it. It is just like falling asleep, except it is an endless sleep. Since we are a part of infinity, the matter of which we are made does not disappear. It continues to exist in the soil, or in plants, or even in animals, clearly losing all homogeneity and therefore all identity. This part of infinity, that was organized by our creators according to a very precise structure, returns to infinity while remaining a part of this small ball called the Earth, which is alive. Everyone has the right to live, the right to love, and the right to die. Everyone is the director of his or her own life and death. Death is nothing, but suffering is terrible, and everything must be done to eliminate it. Someone who is suffering too much has the right to commit suicide. If this person's actions were positive during his or her life, he or she will be admitted to the planet of the Eternals. If someone you love suffers very much and wishes to die, but does not have the strength to commit suicide, help them to take their own life. When science one day enables you to eliminate human suffering, then you can ask yourselves whether it is right to commit suicide or not.
Society and government.
Just as a human body has a brain, it is essential that society should have a government to make decisions. So you will do everything you can to set up a government that practices geniocracy, which puts intelligence in power. You will also participate in the creation of a worldwide political party advocating humanitarianism and geniocracy, as they are described in the first part of this message of the Elohim, and you will support its candidates. Only via geniocracy can humanity move fully into the golden age. Total democracy is not good. A body in which all the cells command cannot survive. Only intelligent people should be permitted to make decisions involving humanity. You will therefore refuse to vote unless a candidate advocating geniocracy and humanitarianism is standing for election. Neither universal suffrage or public opinion polls are valid ways of governing the world. To govern is to foresee, not to follow the reactions of a sheep-like population, among whom only a very small number are sufficiently awakened to guide humanity. Since there are very few awakened people, if we base decisions on universal suffrage or opinion polls, the decisions become the choice of the majority, and therefore of those who are not awakened. Such people respond in the interests of their immediate gratification, or as a result of instinctive reactions which are unconsciously confined in a straitjacket of obscurantism and conditioning. Only geniocracy, which is a selective democracy, is worthwhile, as was stated in the first part of this message of the Elohim. Only people whose net level of intelligence is 50% above average should be eligible to stand for election, and only those whose net level of intelligence is 10% above the average should be eligible to vote. Scientists are already developing techniques to measure net intelligence. Follow their advice, and act in such a way that the most precious mineral of humanity, exceptionally gifted children, may receive an education at a level appropriate to their genius, since normal education is designed only for children of average intelligence. It is not the number of diplomas that one has obtained that signifies intelligence, since this only calls upon the rather uninteresting faculty of memory, which machines can replace. Intelligence, in its raw state, is the quality that can make peasants or workers much more intelligent than engineers or professors. This can be spoken of as common sense, as well as creative genius, because most inventions are nothing more than a matter of common sense. As already stated, to govern is to foresee, and all the great problems that humanity is now facing prove that past governments did not have foresight, and were therefore incompetent governments. The problem does not lie with the people who govern, but rather the technique that is used to choose them. The problem is the way we select those who govern us. Basic democracy must be replaced by selective democracy. That is geniocracy, which puts intelligent people in power. This is a very fundamental requirement. Human laws are indispensable, and you will respect them, while seeing to it that those that are unfair or obsolete are changed. However, do not hesitate to choose the laws of our creators above human laws, because even human judges will be judged someday by our creators. The police will be essential for as long as it takes society to discover the medical means to eradicate violence and prevent criminals or those who infringe the freedom of others from acting out their antisocial impulses. Unlike soldiers, who are the keepers of war, police officers are the keepers of peace, and they will remain indispensable until science has solved this problem. In countries where compulsory military service exists, you will refuse to participate. Instead, ask to be granted the status of a conscientious objector, which will allow you to serve in a division that does not carry weapons, as is your right if your religious or philosophical convictions forbid you to kill your fellow human beings. This is the case for those who believe in the Elohim, our creators, and want to follow the directives of the Guide of Guides of the Raelian movement. Contrary to what many young people think, conscientious objectors are not sent to jail, but serve instead in some civilian role, or in an unarmed division for a period that is double the normal duration of military service. It is better to spend 2 years working in an office than to be trained for 1 year in techniques that enable you to kill fellow human beings. Military service must be eliminated immediately in all the countries of the world. All professional soldiers must be transformed into guardians of world peace who work in the service of freedom and human rights. The only system of government that is worthwhile is geniocracy applying humanitarianism. Capitalism is wrong because it enslaves people to money, benefiting a few on the backs of others. Communism is also wrong, since it places greater importance on equality than on liberty. There must be equality among people at the beginning, at birth, but not afterwards. Although everyone has the right to have sufficient means to live decently, those who do more for their fellow human beings have the right to receive more than those who do nothing for the community. This is obviously a temporary rule until robots can perform all menial labour. Then, after totally abolishing money, all people may devote themselves exclusively to their own personal fulfillment. In the meantime, it is shameful that while some people are dying of hunger, others throw food away to prevent prices collapsing. Instead of throwing away this food, they should distribute it to those who have nothing to eat. Work must not be considered sacred. Everyone has the right to live comfortably, even if they do not work, and should try to fulfill themselves and blossom in whatever field attracts them. If people are organized, it will not take them long to mechanize and automate all indispensable work. Then everybody will be able to grow freely and achieve a sense of fulfillment. If all individuals really set their minds to it, in only a few years freedom from the need to work could be attained. What is required is a marvelous burst of enthusiasm and solidarity in working for the liberation of humankind from material constraints. All humanity's technical and scientific resources should be pooled, and all those working in these areas should truly set their minds on striving together for the well-being of the entire community, rather than for vested interests. Use all the resources which are currently wasted on military budgets or the inane development of nuclear weapons, or even flights into space. Such things could be better planned and much more easily accomplished once humanity is free of material constraints. You have computers and electronic equipment that can better replace manpower. Put them all to work so that this technology can truly operate in the service of humankind. In a few years, you can build a completely different world. You have reached the golden age. Do everything possible to create the biological robot that will release you from all menial labour and enable you to blossom and fulfill yourselves. Urban development must be reconsidered, as it is described in the first part of this message of the Elohim. You must build very tall communal houses situated in open country, so that the individual houses do not devour nature. Never forget that if everyone had a country house with a small garden, there would be no more countryside. These communal houses must be cities that are equipped with everything people need and be capable of accommodating about 50,000 inhabitants each. Until the day you become creators and can recreate it yourselves, you must respect nature. By respecting nature, you respect those who created it, our parents, the Elohim. You will never make animals suffer. You may kill them to feed on their flesh, but do this without making them suffer. Although, as already indicated, death is nothing, suffering is an abomination, and you must avoid making animals suffer, as you must prevent human beings from suffering. Nevertheless, do not eat too much meat, and you will feel better for it. You may live on all that the land provides. You do not have to follow a special diet. You may eat meat, vegetables, fruit, and other plants, but it is foolish to follow a vegetarian diet under the pretext that you do not want to live on the meat of other living creatures. Plants are alive just as you are, and suffer in the same way that you do. So you must not cause suffering to plants. Do not intoxicate yourself with alcoholic beverages. You may drink a little wine while eating, for it is a product of the earth, but never intoxicate yourself. You may drink alcoholic beverages in exceptional circumstances, but in very small quantities, and accompanied by solid food so that you never get drunk. Anyone who is drunk is no longer capable of being in harmony with infinity, nor able to control himself. This is something appalling in the eyes of our creators. You will not smoke, for the human body was not made to inhale smoke. This has appalling effects on the organism and prevents total fulfillment and harmonization with infinity. You will not take drugs. You will not drug yourself in any way. For the awakened mind needs nothing outside itself to approach infinity. It is an abomination in the eyes of our creators that people think they must take drugs to improve themselves. Human beings have no need to improve themselves because all are perfect, having been made in the image of our creators. To say that a human being is imperfect is to insult our creators who made us in their image. But although we are perfect, we cease to be so if we think of ourselves as imperfect and remain resigned to such thoughts. To remain perfect as the Elohim created us, We need to make an effort at every moment of the day to keep ourselves in an awakened state.
Meditation and prayer.
You should meditate at least once a day, locating yourself in relation to infinity, in relation to the Elohim, to society, and yourself. You should meditate upon awakening so that your whole being becomes fully conscious of infinity, and you are placed in full possession of all your faculties. You should meditate before each meal so that all parts of your body eat when you eat, and when you nourish yourself, think of what you are doing. Your meditation will not be a dry meditation, but on the contrary, a sensual meditation. You will let yourself be engulfed by peace and harmony until it becomes a pleasurable delight. Your meditation should not be a forced labour, but a pleasure. It is better to not meditate at all than to meditate without really wanting to do so. Do not impose meditation on your children or your family, but explain to them the pleasure that it gives and the sense of well-being that it brings. And if they then feel like meditating, try to teach them what you know. Think intensely of the Elohim, our creators, at least once a day, and try to communicate with them telepathically. In this way, you will rediscover the original meaning of prayer. If you do not know how to go about it, you can take your inspiration from the Lord's Prayer, the words of which are perfectly appropriate for communication with our creators. At least once a week, attempt a group telepathic communication with the Elohim, alongside other people from your region who believe in them. If possible, you should be accompanied by a guide. Do your very best every year to attend the meeting of all those who believe in the Elohim and in the message they have given to the last of the prophets.
Technique for attempting telepathic contact with the Elohim.
Here is a model of what you could say while looking towards the sky and thinking intensely about the words. Elohim, you are there somewhere near those stars. Elohim, you are there, and I know you are watching us. Elohim, you are there, and I would so much like to meet you. Elohim, you are there, and who am I to hope to deserve a contact? Elohim, I recognize you as our creators, and I place myself humbly at your service. Elohim, I recognize Claude Rael, your messenger, as my guide, and I believe in him and in the message you gave him. Elohim, I will do my best to make the message known to those around me, because I know I have not done enough. Elohim, I love all human beings as my brothers and sisters, because they are made in your image. Elohim, I'm trying to bring them happiness by opening their minds to infinity and revealing to them what was revealed to me. Elohim, I'm trying to stop their suffering by placing my whole being at the service of humankind, of which I am a part. Elohim, I'm trying to use to the utmost the mind you have given me to help humankind emerge from darkness and suffering. Elohim, I hope that you will judge the little I have done by the end of my life to be sufficient to grant me the right to eternal life on the planet of the wise. I love you, as you must have loved human beings to admit the best of them among your eternals.
The arts.
Do your best to encourage artists and to help your child if he or she is attracted by the arts. Art is one of the things which best enables you to harmonize with infinity. Consider every natural thing an art, and every art a natural thing. Surround yourself with artistic things whether they appeal to your ears, your eyes, your sense of touch, smell, or taste. Everything which appeals to the senses is artistic. There is more than just music, painting, sculpture, and all the officially recognized arts. Gastronomy is also an art, as well as perfume making, since they both appeal to the senses. Standing above all, finally, love is an art. All art makes use of harmony, and therefore allows those who appreciate it to be taken over by something harmonious. This consequently produces the right conditions for placing oneself in harmony with infinity. Literature is particularly important because it contributes to opening people's minds by showing them new horizons. But literature for literature's sake is just prattle. What counts is not writing beautiful sentences, but the transmission of new ideas to others through reading. Audiovisual means are even more important, for they appeal to our senses of sight and hearing at the same time. They could well replace literature, since they are more complete. Meanwhile, literature is useful for the time being.
Sensual meditation.
If you want to reach a high level of harmony with infinity, arrange a place of sensual meditation for yourself. Place in it works of art, paintings, reproductions, tapestries, posters, sculptures, drawings, photographs, or anything else that is intended to represent love, infinity, and sensuality for the enjoyment of your eyes. Arrange for yourself a corner where you can sit close to the ground, on cushions for example, or lie down on a couch or on fur, for the pleasure of touching it. Evaporate agreeable scents and oils to please your nose. Have a tape recorder and a cassette on which you have recorded music that you'd like for the pleasure of your ears. Have trays and bottles filled with food and drink that you like for the pleasure of your mouth. And invite one or several people you love, who share your tastes and with whom you feel at ease and in harmony. Then feed your senses together and open your bodies in order to open your minds in love and fraternity. If someone appeals to you physically, and you feel that it is reciprocal, invite him or her to this place. Together you can reach a sublime state of harmony, which will enable you to approach infinity by satisfying your five senses. To this state will be added the synthesis of all these enjoyments, the physical union of two individuals in total harmony and in the illumination of the act of love. Obviously, the harmony must first exist spiritually. In other words, there must be a mutual attraction between the minds and the bodies of the individuals in the way they approach and respect each other. But a spiritual love is always made sublime by a fulfilled physical love. To love is to give and expect nothing in exchange. If you love somebody, you should give yourself to this person entirely if he or she desires it. Never be jealous, for jealousy is the opposite emotion to love. When you love someone, you must seek his or her happiness first and foremost and in every way. To love is to seek the happiness of others and not your own. If the person you love is attracted to another, do not be jealous. On the contrary, be happy that the one you love is happy, even if it is because of somebody else. Love also the person who, like you, wants to bring happiness to the person you love, and who therefore has the same goal as you. Jealousy is the fear that someone else may make the person you love happier than you do yourself, and that you may lose the one you love. But instead of feeling jealous, we should try to do as much as possible to make the person we love happy. And if somebody else succeeds better in this, we should be happy about it. What counts is not that our beloved be happy because of us, but simply that they are happy. Whoever is responsible. So if the person you love is happy with someone else,